What's up, tribe? It's Hustle and Thrive. I am Shea Perkins.
And I am Julian Frazier.
How do you spell Frazier?
With a Z, actually, not like the sitcom.
Not like the
With
sitcom?
an
Okay.
S, yeah. So if you're looking for me on social media, that is Frazier.
Z.
My middle name's Tyler, actually, so go ahead and stalk me real fast.
20 seconds in, already derailed.
Already.
This is the second podcast that we've recorded for the evening, so we're a little bit more loosey-goosey. But
But question, speaking of derailed, can you really beat derailed if you haven't really announced what the topic for the day is yet?
oh yeah, you guys have no idea we're getting
You
in
can't
here.
derail if you have not first gotten on rail.
We are not even railed yet.
Will you get us on rail, please?
Get us on rail. Okay, we're setting the rails down. Today we are going over awareness and how it is very likely the first step you're going to take towards making a change in anything.
Okay.
Becoming aware of the current situation.
Right. And what we were talking about, and, we were making sort of lists, like those very easy, chunkable takeaways for the kind of the ends of podcasts where we're summarizing things. And what we found was that for a lot of these lists, for these step-by-step guides, the first step was always like awareness, like figure out that you're doing something wrong or figure out that you need to change something.
Right.
So we were like, why don't we just make a whole podcast about awareness so that when we bring it up over and over again in the future, people kind of know what we're talking about.
Right, and our stance on it. Okay, so what comes to mind right now is AA. The first step is being aware that you have a problem or something like that. Is that correct?
Alcoholics Anonymous?
Alcoholics Anonymous.
Wow, I did not know. I knew there's a 12-step process, but I didn't know that was the first one.
I might have made that up. We should probably fact check that, guys.
Yeah, well, he's going to go ahead and Google that. But I want to tell you that actually when I think of awareness, I think of it as the first step of mindfulness. So there's, in psychotherapy, mindfulness is kind of a practice that we know that is very helpful for decreasing anxiety and depression, and is very helpful for things like trauma and having opportunities to, decrease negative symptoms. And mindfulness is kind of a two-step process of first awareness and then acceptance. So it seems like whether it's AA or whether it's mindfulness practice and psychotherapy, awareness is kind of a first step.
Awareness is kind of the first step. So a working example would maybe let's even talk about alcoholism because that's what we were getting at earlier.
Sure.
Literally just looked it up, had to fact check myself.
Good.
The first of the 12 steps in AA is we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. The first step is literally being aware that you are powerless over something, and that is the first thing you have to do. And it sounds like duh, that's obvious, but a lot of times that's literally people go wrong. They aren't first aware that they're doing the thing.
Right. So it's confirmed. We fact checked it. That's the first step in AA. But I think that you bring up a great point, right? You can't be aware of, or you can't fix a problem before you're aware that the problem exists. Right.
Yeah.
There's things that you can do preventatively, but once I've turned in my test at the end of the day, I have to wait until I get feedback before I can myself make adjustments to my knowledge, to how I understand things. I have to not know, and I have to be aware that I don't know before I can take corrective action.
Right. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, coming with some ideas of what awareness means for us, and I think you were talking about some working examples. Maybe, what are some examples for you, Shae, where awareness has been important for you or where maybe you use it regularly?
Okay, so I would say one of the main changes I'm trying to make to my life right now is just to be more of a, sounds funny, but an adult. I want to start being places on time. I want to start taking very actionable steps towards my goals. I want to effectively be an adult. And the first thing that I had to get through my head was being aware that I don't always act like an adult. And I'm able to look around and be like, wow, all of these problems are not anyone's responsibility other than mine. So it was becoming aware of what I've been doing to my life by just being a little on the, irresponsible side. And I'm trying to make a big change there.
So you were already on or you were kind of wandering into the irresponsible side, and that was necessary for you to gain some awareness.
Yeah, definitely. I had to stop making excuses and literally become aware. I was like, oh, I'm doing this. This is me. Not anybody else, not life, not nothing.
Did it come to you like all at once, like an epiphany, or was it one of those things that kind of like crept up on you? It was gradual.
I would say, I mean, over the course of my, probably starting in like, 16, 17, I started like, I was an adult, so I was starting to think like, okay, I got to get my life together. But it wasn't until recently, I don't know how heavy we can get on the podcast.
We're talking about the awareness, so as heavy as you like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is a deep, like abstract topic, and we'll take it to whatever corner we need to communicate.
Okay, cool. It's not a super aggressive, super deep topic, but recently had a death in the family, and it was kind of a shock to the whole family in that they passed away just out of nowhere.
Right.
And I just kind of got to thinking like, wow, that can happen at any time. And it made me, be more conscious of like what I'm doing and what I might end up leaving behind if I pass away so suddenly.
Right.
And it really forced me to become aware. It was like, this is what my life is, and this is what I want it to be, and this is what's holding me back. And it was that awareness of what I am doing that needs to be changed.
Right. And I recall that you had gone home for a week or a couple of weeks to kind of be with family during that time. So
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm sure I speak for myself and all the listeners when I say sorry for your loss.
It's okay. But it taught me a lot, and it's part of life, I guess.
And it sounds like that was kind of a shock to the system in some ways that brought some things to your attention.
Right.
And I think that is a great illustration of how pain in its many forms is a great cue for awareness.
It is. That shock to the system sometimes is what you need.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying as deep as like grief and loss and bereavement, but more like if something jabs me too hard and it hurts, I'm going to become aware of it, and my attention is going to shift. And
there's a snake in my boot.
There's a snake. I figured before it bit me, I would figure out that there was actually a snake.
Probably. At least there was something in your boot.
How common was that, do you think, that they put it in Toy Story?
I mean, if it's a saying, I'm sure it happened. Worthy of knowing.
I kind of have to check my boots more often.
Yeah, you got to flip them upside down and get all the snakes out.
Oh, man. But in any case, what we're trying to say is that sometimes pain is a catalyst. It's the shock to the system that lets you know that maybe there's a snake in your boot to remove.
Okay, cool. We'll make that part of the podcast.
Does that sound like a good way of kind of summing up some of the things that you were explaining?
You have to be aware of the snake before you can not get bit by the snake.
Before you can remove it, and thus prevent yourself from being
bit. There's something here. I don't know, guys. Just work with us.
Cool. So those were some like bigger like life examples of maybe part of your journey growing up and maturing. What are maybe some day-to-day examples for Shae?
Day-to-day examples. So I'm assuming we can go here with this, but I have a fairly daily practice of meditation. And a simple kind of definition of meditation is taking time throughout the day, or at a period of time of the day, to be conscious of the present moment on purpose. So literally sitting down.
That's good. Finding
time to be alone so you're not distracted, and just making an effort to be conscious of the present moment. And it sounds like weird new agey mumbo jumbo, but you would be surprised how difficult it is to literally just not stop all of your thoughts, but to kind of see them for what they are and step away from them and just be aware of literally what is going on
for sure
right here, right now. And that's a great practice that I've adopted. And at first, I really wasn't feeling it, but after a while, it started making its way in my life, and that's been a good step towards awareness.
Yeah, and I think there are, I mean, you say that it's kind of like woo-woo or like new agey, but when you think about the history of meditation and where it comes from and how long the human race has like had meditation as a tool, it's kind of not new agey at all. It's kind of like, it's actually way older than we are.
Old agey.
And I think some people in Western cultures are kind of discovering some of the benefits of meditation in its many forms. So I think that's a great example, really, of one form of awareness or cultivating that. And I think touching on that briefly as a way of adding awareness to your own life later might be a good idea.
So what do you have going on in your life that is something you are aware of, or some way you practice being aware?
I try to practice awareness in little weird ways throughout the day.
How weird are we talking?
I'm not talking about weird. I'm just saying, like, why would Julian need to be aware of that thing? So here's an example. When I put my shoes on in the morning, I stop to notice which shoe I'm tying first. Because that's one of those things that's way into the background of your mind that you don't think about, that you just do when you're out the door in the morning. And I stop to think, I do this. I stop and I think like, okay, which shoe should I tie first? And then I make that decision, and that's like a small win for my day. Like, yeah,
Funny.
I was conscious for
Yeah, I see what you're getting
for
at.
that second, right?
I see what you're getting at.
And this probably happens a number of different times where there's things where I will recognize that I'm doing automatically, and I'll stop and be like, how can I just like take control of this one micro moment?
Like tune in just for a second.
Right, and say like, oh yeah, like I did this. It wasn't my habits, it wasn't my environment. It was like I decided this thing. I was the thing that had the majority vote.
Yeah, as opposed to, and I think what you're getting at is there's a very strong part of our brain that is responsible for habits and automatic responses, and sometimes we get so lost in that we literally become unaware of what we're doing. I would bet that you don't really pay attention when you're driving to work. I mean, you do enough to not crash, but you don't really think of every single, like mile you drove. It's just like you're in the car and all of a sudden you're at work.
Yeah, and that's a great example. And I know tons of people have used it, but as you were saying that, I was thinking of like my route to work.
Yeah.
And I have taken the same route, especially to school, so many times.
Yeah.
That it all just kind of blurs together.
Like you don't know when you saw that funny looking red car with the bumper falling off. And you remember when you saw that wreck. It's just like a blur in your head of rides to school.
Right, absolutely. It's all become one. And that's one example. The other example of when I am practicing awareness or maybe even mindfulness is when I absolutely have to, when almost all of who I am or my being is kind of consumed in an action. And that happens a lot in the gym. When I'm playing a sport or I'm, doing parkour is a great example. But when I'm doing a bench press and I'm like near max, I have someone spotting me, and during the moving of that weight, I am like everything else stops being important.
You definitely don't want to be unaware of.
Right.
How much do you bench?
Right now I'm maxed about 250.
250? You don't want to be unaware of 250 pounds looming over your face and throat.
Right. Yeah, that's not a great idea.
250?
That's my one rep max.
Not bad.
I appreciate that. Been working on it for a while. Trying to hit that 1,000 club. We'll talk about that later.
Like 1,000 pound bench press?
Okay, we'll talk about it now. We'll get derailed for just a second.
We're derailing. Here we go.
But we're doing it with awareness. We're making this conscious
We're
decision.
aware that we're derailed.
That's meta,
X-Files theme song.
meta awareness.
Okay.
So the 1,000 club, and I don't know if the internet I don't know who came up with this, but it's like a powerlifting club where your deadlift, your bench press, and your squat all cumulatively equal more than 1,000 pounds.
Oh snap! That's cool. Okay, so are you in it? What are you at right now?
If I'm not in it, I'm close. I need to polish up my deadlift and my squat because they're both hovering around 350, 360.
360. So they both need to be like, I'm not good at math, but like 375 each to equal 600. That's not good. That's horrible math. I don't know, man. Okay, cool.
Yeah, well, I need to confirm those things. And
comment down below where you are in relation to the 1,000 pound club.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Did you know there's
bells for notifications?
There's raw powerlifters that are over the 2,000 pound club?
Oh yeah.
And this is just like their body in the bar.
That's just what
with
they
like
do.
Some elbow reps. And there's a guy, this is a double derailing, but
we're choosing to.
It's a double derail.
Yeah.
Dave Neutrino, or his nickname is the Neutron Star. He, with powerlifting gear, which is like this crazy denim jacket that they wear, he can squat, bench, and deadlift roughly 1,000 pounds each, and he's in a 3,000 pound club. Good lord.
That's stupid. I don't even know if that's a club. And if it's a club, it's like one
It's
person.
like one dude, and he's literally nicknamed after a star.
And is it really a club if it's only one person?
Is it
I don't
really
know.
a club if your blood pressure's that high?
Sounds like a really lonely club.
Really
Anyway,
lonely,
maybe,
chubby club.
Maybe not the most fit club.
Not the fittest club.
But to bring us all the way around,
So underail ourselves.
when I'm doing something like that is so vigorous that it demands all of my attention, I have no choice but to be aware of only that. Like anything that's distracting takes away from my performance at that thing in that moment. So those are probably two examples, one more quirky than the other, of kind of how maybe I use awareness fairly regularly.
Cool. Okay, then I guess we would probably want to touch on stuff like how could awareness help people overcome or just do better in daily problems, like maybe diet, or maybe something like not getting angry at a coworker or something like that. So what do you think that falls in those kind of things?
Right, and I think we both kind of alluded to it, but the ability to change requires that awareness, at least consciously.
Right.
There's plenty of ways to that change takes place unconsciously, but we are not in the driver's seat entirely in those cases. So if it's food, if it's diet, for example, pausing those few moments to make a better food choice over one that we know may not be as good for us.
Right.
Those are often times where when we're hungry, we want to eat food now, and we just grab whatever's convenient, what's fastest, what's closest. That awareness that, wait a second, this isn't great for me. I'm thinking about, losing a few pounds or changing my diet, or let me choose this other option, even though it's not as fast and less convenient.
Yeah, which is funny because, again, our body has so many strong mechanisms that make us do things on a not thought about basis. Like if when food was less of a luxury, if you just ate when you're hungry and just like I don't feel like it, you would starve and die. So your body makes you ravenously hungry, and you just eat the first thing that comes your way.
Right.
Which is funny. We're almost working to not undo those things, but be conscious of those really automatic systems that our body works on.
Right, and it's come to think that a lot of those systems were pre-evolved in the brain, right? So they're in younger or earlier parts of the brain that came before we evolved, like a prefrontal cortex and all the gray matter, the big chunky bits
That's the thinky bits, right?
The thinky bits.
The thinky bits.
That take up the majority of the space in your skull, right? Those things evolved a little bit longer and maybe a little bit more obsolete compared to that awareness, those thinky bits that that are more recent and maybe can give us some advantages in those cases. What are maybe some ideas in terms of how awareness could improve a person's life?
So awareness, it really ends up coming down to just being conscious of what you're doing in opposition to what you are not conscious of doing. I guess I can relate another sports related thing.
Sure.
So again, the parkour guy, that's the sport where you're trying to move effectively and efficiently through an environment, running, jumping, climbing, all that good stuff. And needless to say, sometimes my sport puts me in, I don't want to say danger because it's a very calculated sport, but it puts me at risk of doing something that can be, dangerous. And if I am not completely aware of the way I feel, how big the jump is, the surfaces of things I'm jumping to, the dust on my shoes, the grip of my hands, are they sweaty or are they dry, I will break. So those are times in my life where I become very hyper aware. If anything, I have to tune everything else out and just focus on that thing.
Right. It's like awareness by necessity.
By necessity, yeah.
So if I were to almost take that and apply it to the lives of maybe our listeners, that maybe awareness is also a step for attention and focus and concentration.
Right.
So you may not be doing any athletic things or extreme sports, which parkour may fall under that category. But you may still have a job that you need to do, and you still have tasks that you need to attend to, and often which is most difficult is not being able to find the attention to stay focused or concentrate on a task. It sounds like awareness is kind of a necessary step towards focusing our attention towards completing a task as well.
Yeah, definitely. So something that's just running through my head is relationships. It's a little bit of a complicated topic, but we kind of get used to a way things are done, and we kind of assume
Yeah.
the person is this, and this is going to be the
Absolutely.
outcome of this, and we just kind of become unaware and a little bit on the selfish side of what really needs to be done.
For sure.
In a relationship, each moment is delicate, and each moment takes awareness if you want to flourish the relationship.
Yeah.
And I would say most of us, myself included, could become more aware of friendships, and maybe if you
Right.
have a significant other, or if you have children, or a relationship with somebody in your family,
Yeah.
it go a long way to just literally be more aware of the present moments. Like, when's the last time you tuned in to something maybe your nagging girlfriend said? Like, maybe let's listen to her. Let's actually, what she got to say, what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, especially the way that you kind of phrased relationships as they could be romantic and they could be significant others, but they can also be friends, acquaintances, family members, coworkers, right? These are all different kinds of relationships too, and it's easy to fall into patterns of expectations with people, and even take those things for granted. So maybe awareness is also a step for being able to appraise the value of moments with others.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah,
definitely can agree with that.
Well, I'm just taking your words and reframing them. So
So I definitely agree with myself.
with yourself,
As I always have, because I'm perfect. And I'm very aware of my perfection.
He's perfectionist, perhaps.
Okay, so I don't know how far we're going to get off into this, but mindfulness kind of being the second journey of awareness. Do we want to talk about what mindfulness is and how that kind of applies?
Sure. So again, I had kind of phrased it as mindfulness being a two-step process, or being an equation with two variables, one being awareness and the other being acceptance.
Acceptance. Okay, let's talk about acceptance.
Right. And that's a tough word. That's a loaded word, and it's almost just as vague and abstract. I kind of want to ask what you think about when you think of acceptance, because I already have my own answer to this question. I'm actually curious what's on your mind.
Okay, so acceptance for me, it borders on the line of like, on one end, like surrendering to the moment, accepting what the moment is, and just, this is what it is, and I will proceed from there. And being kind of complacent. It's not complacency. It's not giving up to the moment. It's just becoming so aware of it and so accepting of it that you can just let go all your preconceived notions, let go all of your fears and insecurities and whatever else you got going on, and just be in the moment and proceed appropriately. What is the most obvious, rational thing to do?
Right. What you just described reminded me of like the act of submission in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And submission is kind of a dirty word in our culture. Like oh, I don't want to submit to anything. Like I'm my own independent person. No. But I heard it phrased a way that resonated with me, and that submission being like submission, like under the mission.
Under the mission.
Like I am in this moment under the mission of whatever I'm experiencing.
Okay.
And when you
cool.
kind of
I like that.
reframe it from like oh yeah, like I'm being submissive or something,
Giving up.
right, to I'm in this moment being under the mission, that I think that or that idea of surrender, or being part of an experience.
And one thing I'd like to point out is like our almost necessity to control every single variable that goes into something. And I hate to say it, but you're never going to control every single variable. Life is bigger than you. Life is stronger than you. It will always win. You will never be in complete control.
Sure, yeah.
And to a degree, letting go of all of that control can actually put you in a position where you can make a better choice, and you can do things more effectively and get ahead in the long run by not clinging, to all the control you think you have.
Man, and that locus of control, that is definitely like, as you're saying that, I was thinking that is such a big topic that it would be huge for a lot of people if we just did a whole episode on just that. But it also segued really well into like some of my notions of acceptance as well, and you've touched on a lot of them. And I would add to that by saying that there is a level of in acceptance of taking responsibility for the experience that you're having, or for what is taking place that your attention has been brought to. And I'll explain that with an illustration. So just as you had described, you're not in control of every situation. But sometimes you can be in the driver's seat of a situation.
Okay, for sure.
Imagine you're driving down the road and you stop at a stoplight and the person behind you doesn't notice in time and runs into the back of your car. Classic fender bender, right? Classic. You both get out of the car and you have to take insurance and like all of these annoying things. You got to go to the auto body shop, and you've just been handed a dozen more errands that you didn't need, and you might be late for work or you might be late home or whatever. And there's all these inconveniences that now you have to deal with, even though the car accident wasn't your fault.
Right.
So the car accident took place, and now you have to deal with its aftermath. You have to deal with the consequences of it, even though you didn't cause it. And the idea of acceptance, as I understand it, is in that moment saying, I'm going to take responsibility for all these new errands and consequences and aftermaths that now I have to deal with, even if I was not the cause of what is taking place. I am not the cause of what I'm experiencing. I want to take responsibility for it.
Yeah. There was like a talk not talk, but it was just like a little snippet. I think, not Will Ferrell, Will Smith put out. He was talking about the difference between fault and responsibility. And some things, while they're not your fault, they're still your responsibility, and you got to accept that, and you got to move forwards like, I don't want to say an adult, but you got to move forwards like a mature people person.
Right. I mean, because the alternative is you still have to deal with the car accident. Those errands still need to be run, and you can be mad about it the whole time and not take responsibility for it, being irresponsible, kind of rounding back to your example earlier in the cast.
Like a circle. We like circles here.
Man, that's good. We like go veering off, and then we like coming back in circles. Anyway, that itself being a small derailing. But yeah, the idea is that acceptance is in some parts submission, being under the mission of the experience, and also taking responsibility for the experience itself. So first being aware of the experience happening, and then being able to assume a position of responsibility. Does that about wrap it up? Is there any other components that you can think of?
I could just end it on a tidbit.
Sure.
So my family, like my dad and my grandma, always used to tell me that your life is what you make it. And I never understood that till I got older. And what it kind of means to me now is my life is literally up to me. I have to be aware of the choices I'm making. I have to be aware of my goals. I have to be aware of what I'm doing in order to make my life what I want to make it. And it's been just a cool, fresh little reminder of just, be aware of what you're doing. Just make some better decisions and think about what's going on.
And I'm wondering if there's one or two either resources or skills or techniques that you would prescribe to people if they're thinking, you know what, I could probably use an opportunity to increase my awareness in one way or another.
So the first thing being is, and again I'll say it, is meditating, or tating for short.
There you go.
Sometimes you gotta take a moment and just get a good old tate going.
You gotta get you tated.
Oh God. Anyways, I even just starting with a small 5-minute session just a day, or even a couple times a week, of just being alone with the moment on purpose, being aware.
#Tate. Like, comment, and subscribe if you tate regularly.
If you're tating on the daily. But really, at first it seems just like, what is this? What's going on? But after a while, it bleeds into the rest of your performance, and you just more easily become aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
And then if I were to recommend a second resource, so I was offered this book by a counselor I was seeing a couple years ago. It is called The Untethered Soul. The Journey Beyond Yourself. It is by Michael A. Singer.
Wow, that sounds deep.
It is extremely deep, like the deep end of the pool deep.
Wow.
It is, the first 2 chapters are particularly powerful, and what they talk about is understanding that the voice inside your head that is making random judgments and random assessment of what's going on is not you. It is just a voice in your head that kind of just runs all day long. And that was so powerful to me to understand that, like, wow, my random prejudice towards this is not real. It's just what's going on in my head. And to be aware of my own thoughts and perceptions and that whatever voice is in my head going on is two separate things, and being aware of it was the first stepping stone towards being a more mindful person.
State. Yeah,
Yeah.
And that is definitely like deep end of the pool deep once you start talking about like identity and like sometimes you are not what you think, and wow.
Like, yeah, it's weird.
I actually kind of want to read that book now.
It's dope. It's got a horse on the front. It's blue. It looks pretty. It looks like it's going to be a cheesy romance novel, but it's not.
Well, that's a great resource for the people out there. And if maybe you're listening to this and you're like, you know what, I'm not really into that woo-woo meditation stuff, and I don't have time to read books, I'm going to give you 2 techniques that you can use right now.
Hit 'em.
To practice awareness. Super easy. And I use this with clients sometimes when I'm first introducing mindfulness ideas into their lives. Do this. Go to your cupboard when you're at home. Get a glass, preferably a small one. Fill it almost all the way up with water, like to the brim with water, to the point where you're almost thinking that it might spill out. And then I want you to do is I want you to take that cup and I want you to do a lap around your house or your apartment or visit every room and do your best not to spill any water. What you'll find is that just the process of walking around, having to actually do a movement, but holding that water and trying not to spill it, so much of your attention is going to be drawn to that water. And if you want to look up from the water, you want to adjust, you do so very slowly, and you'll be very aware of each minute detail, right? And that's just like a technique, like
that's so cool. That's so awesome. I can imagine myself doing that.
Right, and that's fun things if you're feeling anxious, that you can just stop and do that as well. Here is a second technique, and you could be picky and choosy about when you do this. A lot of people talk about breathing being important and breathing for meditation. I'm actually going to tell you the opposite. I want you to hold your breath. I want you to take a deep breath in, and I want you to hold your breath. And what you'll find is that as the pressure or the intensity of that feeling of not breathing continues to mount, your vision, your perception will also narrow with it. You'll notice that only after a few seconds of holding your breath, you will only be able to think about your breath and holding it or not holding it until at some point you have to relinquish your breath. This is also a great centering technique if there aren't a lot of stressful things going on around you and you're just thinking about, right? I probably wouldn't say like, hold your breath
in the middle of the mall or something.
Right, if you're like taking a test and you just like hold your breath. But if you are in a position where, say, you're sitting down to tackle a to-do list and you have a number of different assignments, this is a good opportunity to stop, hold your breath, be able to center yourself around that one experience of holding your breath, and then say, okay, what do I want to actually do once you start breathing normally again? Just 2 very simple techniques. I got like a whole hat, a whole like magician's like treasure trove full of techniques, kind of like that. That's just
literally sitting next to us on the table. It's a treasure chest.
It's an actual, like, I think I got it from a leprechaun or something.
From a leprechaun.
Like it was one of those at the end of a rainbow. Anyway, that's a completely different insight.
Derailed.
It's a derailing, but it's like a meta derailing because you don't even know the inside joke behind that.
Meta derailing. Good Lord.
So you got 2 ideas from Shae, both a resource, a book. He also recommended some meditation. I just gave you 2 real quick techniques if you're too cool for the things that Shae said and want to try something that's super concrete, super down to earth. Not to say that Shae's ideas weren't brilliant, because I think that everyone should do a little bit of meditating in one form or another, and you should also read books. But that's my bias. Shae, how are we closing out, brother?
2018 is the year of meditating.
Meditate. So again,
that was so bad. That just came, I was so confident.
That was perfect.
Oh, God.
That was. I hope people that listening are laughing with us.
Oh, God.
Folks, #Tate, like, comment, and subscribe. We have been Hustle and Thrive. I am Julian Frazier.
And I'm Shae Perkins.
And we will see you guys next time.
But